I really didn't even start bonding with the brother until after Baba had transitioned, and come to find out, Baba Moudou is Baba Kalende's #1 mycology student, and he was grinding rice. A lot of y'all might have to get the grinding rice story. I don't know if he's gonna include that today or whatever, but there's a whole grinding rice principle that is all about the young Padawan before he becomes a true Jedi, studying with the Jedi. You know what I'm saying? You gotta go through your baby Luke Skywalker with Yoda before you can really be a true Jedi. And this weekend, my whole theme has been about capturing the words of Jedi. And I am more than honored to present to you all today somebody that Kalende took around the world, that Kalende considered a friend, a student. And when Kalende called you Baba, then I call you Baba. Y'all make some noise today for Baba Moudou.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Can everybody hear me in the back? All right, all right. This is a beautiful sight. I can personally say that we know that Ahati, or Kalindi as we know him, is here in spirit. So I'm saluting everybody right now. But before we begin, I'll start in the traditional way that Ahati always taught me. First, I acknowledge the EE family for sharing Baba with us. Because if anybody knew, Baba was 4 places at once, all the time. And you know, it was a great sacrifice on his family, and they've always been gracious, you know, carriers of the culture. So I salute the EE family. I come here, Baba Moudou Baqui. Secondly, I like to represent my Tamarian family. Tamarian, where you at? Yes. Yes. And we're a family that expands, that goes beyond space and time. And as we go into this is part of what we're going to talk about. Also, if there are any inaccuracies, they're all my own. And I ask forgiveness for those who I may speak of. But I will speak on my master, teacher, Ahati Kalindi. Cool runnings with the master. So when I first met Ahati, I was a young brother, similar to my man Oye. You know, I was half street, half about the movement. And I was at my highest militancy phase. And so we used to organize events every year called the Self-Determination Conference. And it was always centered around health, wealth, knowledge of self, defense, and economics. And so shout out to my elder Owusu, but he was the one that schooled me. And he told me to contact this brother named Kalindi. And when I met him, if anybody met Kalindi, he's not big on words when he first meets you. So I'm sitting there intimidated, not knowing what to say. Little that I know that he's studying me. So at the end of this conference, I'm in a room with him. I'm gonna say Baba Malik, Baba Kwame Kenyatta. For those in Detroit, these are some of the luminaries in our movement. And so they began to grill me. Like, grill me. Like, why are you here? Why are you doing this? What is it about? What is it really about? And they just put me through the ringer, and I didn't know what this was about. Later on, I come to find out as I move on through the university, I became an educator. Well, this was a low-key interview for one of the schools that Ahati Kalindi founded. And that's one of the things I want to share with you today, because this man was an institution builder. He was a warrior priest scholar. And this is something that he instilled in all of us. And I'm going to share a little bit about my process with him, my growing with him, and some of the things I learned. So, of course, this is the image I like to always remember him as, you know, the great Ahati Kalindi. And one of the first lessons he taught me was the science of the cap. And this is a science that many people didn't understand at the time. But he taught me the science of how in ancient times, the direction of the cap represents your place in society. So if you were of the warrior class, you would wear it a certain way. If you were the intellectual class, you would wear it a certain way. If you were the artistic class, you would wear it a certain way. And this is how you would be received. Okay, so you see the way he's wearing it. It's half warrior, half priest. And so this is the type of science that he would teach so you could recognize who you're interacting with. The great Ahati Kalindi. So when I first met Kalindi after this initial session, I'm new at this school. I'm doing my thing, but at the same time, I'm organizing in the streets with a group that's long-standing in the BLM. And I'm not talking Black Lives Matter, I'm talking the Black Liberation Movement. Now, this movement was going on for about 500 years at least. And so Kalindi represents the greatest of this tradition. And so in this situation, he was grilling me once again to just see who was this young guy, what was he about, and what was his focus. I ended up working at the school he was at, and he ended up being the head instructor of martial arts. So every time we would get opportunity, you know I was sitting there trying to soak up whatever he could offer, or whatever the family could offer. Sometimes it would be him, it'll be sometimes Mama Jendai, sometimes Mama Ayana, but I was always there, and we grew to become family from there. So as we began to develop, my activities outside of the school were being part of an organization who was charged with protecting and defending the rights of our leaders. And I'll leave it at that. And Kalindi was a very high, important person in that organization. So once again, somebody recommended that I train with him. And so I approached him and asked if I can join his class. Actually, it was me and my brother Jason, North Star. Y'all will see him around. And so as we joined the class, we really didn't have a clue what was going on. And it was an amazing thing. This is where I met the rest of the Tamarian family, you know, Ramasu, you know, my brother back there, Willie, you know, man, I can go on and on. Oh, Oshtrard, you know, represent anyway. We became family. And I began to learn what the science and the culture was about. And so at first, as a young man, I'm thinking it's about kicking and punching. And of course, as a young man, that's what it's about. And as I asked him, in a deeper sense, what is this science? He said, oh, it doesn't come from this planet. I'm sitting there like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, most of our stuff isn't even off this planet. I'm like, what are you talking about? So then he began to tell me and teach me the ancient cosmogony. And see, this is the ancient stuff, you know, before the Bible and the Abrahamic traditions, the ancient science of the demiurge, and the ancient science about our existence beyond this planet, and our existence and our connection with other entities, and our engagement with them, and the ultimate work that we're doing. And so, of course, I'm mystified. I'm like, man. And so as we learning these things, one of the first things he taught me, he said, first thing you have to understand is most people haven't achieved humanity yet. I'm like, damn, what does that mean? He say, humanity is not something that's granted, it's something you earn. And until you reach a point, do you get the honor of being considered a human. So I'm like, what does that mean? So he began to teach this ancient science about, we all heard of the original Garden of Eden and things like that. But he taught the original version of the Garden of Eden, when he talked about these ancient divine beings who were basically trapped in the garden, being played upon by beings of light and beings of the earth. And so he said, listen, he said the first thing you got to understand is that your beings of light are just as evil as the being of darkness. It's the first thing you understand. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, listen, he said more death and destruction is done in the pursuit of the so-called light and righteous. He says because people get blinded by the light. He said, this is the meaning of Lucifer. I said, damn. I said, what? He said, yeah, that's what Lucifer is, the blinding light that you pursue and leads you off a cliff to where you're doing evil things. I said, damn. So then he began to talk about Set and the existence of the opposite, polar opposite, and how that realm was essentially a tug of war between a divine being called the human, and how humans have been divided for a millennia, either choosing those beings of light or those beings of material. And both of those beings were nefarious to our development. And that the ultimate aim was to reestablish the human. And as you see today, it's true. Whether you look at a crass materialist or you look at an advanced spiritualist, you see some of the most cruel behaviors in the sake of pursuing their idea. And so as we began to learn this science, I say, so what does that mean? He said, you got to be bigger than who you are. And I'm sure we've heard that before. I say, what do you mean bigger than what you are? He said, none of this stuff can you accept as good enough for the human condition. So I said, well, what's the options? He said, you have to go into the unseen realm, into the higher realms. And you see where the gods dwell, and you see where these people who manipulate us, or these beings that manipulate us exist. He said, this is the purpose of our martial science. He said, these are the beings, these so-called beings of influence, these daemons or whatever we call them. And so as I began to understand it, he said, through this martial science, of course, we master the gross physical. But through the gross physical, you master the spiritual. And through understanding the science of war, you understand the science of peace. And so through that divine understanding, he began to teach me the science of the circle, which our science is based on, the ancient science of the circle. Now, meanwhile, as he moves abroad, people are questioning him. You know, he comes up and says, yo, I'm an African martial artist. Martial arts community looking at him like, yeah, whatever, African martial arts my behind. And so even in the realm of the psychedelics, he would show up. People would not acknowledge him. Show up at the Melanin Conference. Oh, that's nonsense. Show up at the ASCAT Conference. Oh, that's nonsense. None of these scholars would listen to him. But this was the man that actually went and found out firsthand. And so the first thing I learned was that you have to move with integrity, especially when you're dealing with supreme knowledge. You can't be fazed by those who don't have an understanding. Now, the best thing you can do is share and show through example. But I've seen this man be shunned by some of these so-called great scholars and not know what they're talking about. I've seen him at the same time approach him, saying, here, 5 grams. They run. But meanwhile, when it comes to these big conferences and all of this, he'd be the last one on the stage. So in the travels, I've seen both his prominence for those who recognize him and for those who are ignorant, those who shunned him. And so the reason this is so special to me, because Ahati worked for that recognition, and today he finally gets it. And so big ups to all of us. You know what I'm saying? You know, this brother was so humble. This was the cat that it'll be 3 in the morning. If you sick, he might just show up at your house, like, here, have some of this. And so he showed me that the essence of being a warrior was being a servant first. He said, yeah, we can whoop people. That's easy. Anybody can whoop people. He said, but who can elevate the human condition? And so what he brought to the city, a lot of people don't know. Baba Kalindi introduced vegan eating and vegetarianism in the 70s, before most people in our community even heard of it. They were laughing at it. Nonsense. You see what I'm saying? But he had to roll with it. He didn't mind. And some of the greatest minds in this movement now were his early students. Never to brag about it. When we talk about our sovereign rights and understanding constitutional law, this was the first man I know to perfect that right, to the point where he would back up the ATF and DEA like, yeah, he has the paperwork, leave him alone. Bad man. For all my people who understand law. This is the first man who perfected it. We're not talking about in the 90s. Oh, we're talking in the 80s. Big ups to Omari, a master legal scholar who was one of his original students. He was, when we start talking about liberated schools and things of this nature, in his basement was the foundation of one of the first charter schools in Michigan, an African-centered charter school. Always breaking the barriers, always pushing the envelope. Never on the front page though, and happy to not be. And so the way we would always roll is we would avoid cameras. We wouldn't post on the internet. You know, we were always low key because we understood that this knowledge was dangerous, and I mean literally dangerous. I'm talking about where people literally were trying to take this man out, both governmental and private. We talking about situations where this man was surrounded by cops where he whooped them very sufficiently to the point where several had to retire, literally, and he walked away and able to prove self-defense through his technique. This was the bad man. And so this is why a lot of times in there you'll see people say Kalindi Lee. No, his name not Kalindi Lee. It's Kalindi Iyi. But I get it. Because he was like a Kalindi Lee. So we're gonna move on to the next slide. Does anybody recognize this man? Bumpy Johnson, Godfather of Harlem. Very few people know that Kalindi was his grandson. Oh, absolutely. You can see it now. So, now why is this important? Why is this important to this presentation? The reason it's important to this presentation is because Kalindi and his family have always been engaged in the liberation struggle of our people and other peoples. Many people don't know Bumpy Johnson was security for Malcolm. And so he understood the cross-section between liberation and self-defense. And the reason I show this is because there was a lineage. From here, his father was a prize fighter. All his brothers became prize fighters. His family becomes prize fighters, not bullies, but protectors and warriors. So we can move on from there. That's the Godfather of Harlem, for those who don't know, Bumpy Johnson. Now, he was a rough character. Of course, he had some flaws, of course. But he also had a deep and dying love for liberation of his people and liberation from any type of oppression. So no, he wouldn't allow corrupt cops to run Harlem, nor corrupt gangsters. If it's gonna be any gangsters, it's gonna be gangsters from his community, and that's how Bumpy rolled. And that's how Kalindi rolled. He never one to push people away, always one to embrace. So, to Marian Institute, this is my home. This is what I grew up in as a young boy to a man through to Marian Institute. And so another lesson he would taught me was the science of the symbol, because a lot of people see the symbol, didn't understand what it was about. I'm sure most of us understand what this represents, right? The jet column, the symbol of stability. His primary lesson was that you must be a stabilizer. That means someone of integrity. That means you do what you say, and you say what you do. That means you don't smile if it ain't funny, and you don't dance if the music's not right. You're a member of stability because people have to know where you're coming from. That's the first principle of warriorhood, because you stabilize our community in all its chaos. The crook and the flail. As he understood, once again, back to that science of that balance between those light and dark beings. He understood that the crook was to allow that wild nature, was to bring it back in line. That spirit of what we call isfet, or chaos, which is very useful if trained. He also understood the flail was the discipline. And between these two things, the Jed would be established. In other words, the Jedi. In other words, finding that place between those beings of light and darkness. Not beings of gross materialism, but not those ethereal beings that feel they had a right to judge everybody. But establishing our divine right. But to understand that divine right, you have to know where we come from, right? Tamariat, Tamarian. Ancient word for the planet. Okay, the reason he said this was a name of, it represented the building we trained from, but it also represent an epic when humans were at their highest point, before we began getting harassed and molested by the forces that be, corrupt priesthoods and power guilds, when people shared the divine experience directly. They didn't have to go through anybody. Per Ansar, house of life. So in this symbol, we received our charge. We were the house of life to protect and uphold the traditions of our ancestors. From the most ancient tradition of warrior priests, he was reestablishing this. Many people, of course, we see the Ka and Ba. But even behind here, we see embedded the what? Who can see that? That's the mushroom cap. Signs and symbols. This is something he didn't reveal immediately. This is something he did reveal when it came, because he understood that this was the highest point of our martial development. And when me and my brothers reached a certain point, he had us initiate each other and then go out in the community and initiate others. Now, my first instance, when I was pursuing this, he would throw all these cryptic jokes out. So, I would say, man, where do I get it? And then he'll point to the front of a church. He'd say, it's right there. And I would go to the church and I would take pictures. And like, where's it at around the church? And then he would always throw these cryptic things out. And then he'll say, yeah, if you just walk through nature, you'll find that. Never understood what he was talking about. Always talking about this sacred plant, though. So one day, me and my brother Jason Northstar, we got invited to an elder's house named Mr. Johnson. Now, Mr. Johnson, we never met him before, so we walking down the street, we think we had an address, we knock on the door opens up, say, elder guy, he's like, yes. He's like, Mr. Johnson here? They're like, no, slams the door. So me and Jason saying, no, this is a test by the ancient master. Boom, boom, boom. Now I told you Mr. Johnson ain't here. Slam the door. So me and Jay walking down the driveway like, we're not gonna give up this easy. Well, the third time he was locked and loaded, we got the point. So we kept going down the street and we found this Mr. Johnson. And so the first thing we see is a circle of astrologers, engineers, scientists, biologists, Kalindi, you know, and they just sitting around exchanging information. And Kalindi, you know, he hands me a bowl, he gives me a rice grinder and starts grinding. So I happily get to grinding. An hour later, I'm still grinding. So once I'm done, I sit down and say, okay, what's going on? He's like, oh, all right, we gone now. And I'm like, what's going on? This went on for a year. Showing up every Sunday, Mr. Johnson's house grinding, trying to get something out their conversation, trying to understand what they're talking about, and saying, up, time to go. And so what I didn't realize is he was showing me the technique, the basic PF tech, you know. And my brother Oyi, I appreciate the props, man. I was one of his early mycological students, but I damn sure ain't the best, the first. So I know there's some master growers out here. I've learned a lot of techniques, but I learned all the techniques that Ahati did, and I need to up my prolific game in terms of growing. But anyway, as we went through this, he eventually handed us some jars and said, watch them. And so we had to watch them fill out. Then he instructed us how to fruit them, then pick them, and then that's when we began to initiate each other. And of course, being new to these realms and watching each other, we made some silly mistakes. I'm gonna put you out, oh. All right? So one of my brother, first thing, you know, so Oshachari, you know, it's his turn. As brothers, we crossing each other over. So Oshachari, he takes it. You know, if anybody knows, he don't take no BS. So he's always this some bull, you know what I'm saying? So he's taking it, and my brother Willie's watching him. And then I'm silly because early in the game, you don't know, you don't go to sleep while you're watching somebody. But I go to sleep, I got to get up in the morning. So then I hear all this commotion going on in the room, and I'm like, what's going on? So I run out there, and there's Oshachari, you know, mad, pacing back and forth. Yeah. I was like, what's wrong, oh? He say, boy, I tell you, tomorrow I'm kicking Kalindi's ass. I say, are you kicking Kalindi's ass? He said, yeah, I'm kicking his ass. So me and Willie laughing. He say, oh, you gonna kick Kalindi's ass? He say, man, he never told me I was God. I said, he tried to tell you. I mean, highly upset. He never told me this, you know. And so my brother, he's feeling the spirit, you know, and decided to take a leap of faith. My second story, but so I run outside and say, luckily his aim was off. He fell back, but now I see my bro sitting here bleeding in the floor. It's 3 a.m. He on 5 grams. What do you do? I didn't know what to do. This is one of my first times watching. He's bleeding. I can't take him to the hospital. So we're sitting here baking back and forth. Before I know it, I look up, the blood vessels are so beautiful. Look at the white blood cells. This is amazing. He's opening up his wound. I'm like, So we got through that night, and we had a bunch of other crazy nights, you know, as we learn to be watchers, you know, as we learn these things. And, you know, Kalindi was the one that would push us. So as we had a system of 3, 5, 7. And once we got there, he just kept pushing more and more and more. And that's when we started talking about the high dose and what it was about, okay? And what it was about was going beyond the novel doses, because in Kalindi's travels, first off, and big props to everybody here, because this represents 180 degrees of what the psychedelic community looked like in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. Most of the crowd was all white. They were very well off, college educated. And they were most of them were uptight scholars. And so when he would go here, you would see people writing 5 or 6 books talking about their 3-gram experience from 20 years ago. Yeah, I mean, writing books, going on tour, you know, and Kalindi didn't feel anything about it, but then he would raise his hand and say, well, I take more than that, you know. And these people would be like, you know. And so for years, he would try to get into these spaces where people would listen. And through the work, he developed some friendships with some great allies that will open the door in these non-traditional spaces. Because here comes this brother in traditional garb, you know, looking like a Jedi warrior with no PhD, with more understanding of these plants than some of these PhDs. But it took bravery from people to let him get there. And as he got there, he began to talk about stuff that many people who didn't ever get a chance to speak could relate to. So then it started getting emails. Yes, I feel you. Oh my God, thank you, I can relate. Because there's 16, 17-year-olds, 25-year-olds who are experimenting and learning and developing, but they'll never get that stage. And so that's what Kalindi was about, opening the stage for the people. And so we'll hit the next slide. And so as I began to travel and cross, he began to teach me different lessons. And so this is one of the, this is the sword and the stone of one of the last Ashanti rulers, where we hear about the stone and the sword and all of that. Well, this is the real stone and the sword. And so Kalindi taught me to be a first-person investigator. So I said, well, how you learn this? He said, it's simple. I invite him in town, I have him stay with me, and I plan a lecture. I said, that's brilliant. And so through this, he began to get knowledge, firsthand knowledge of all the masters, and he began to get invited and go travel in these things. Next slide, please. I don't have a lot of slides because I know it's been late. This is me and Kalindi when we studied. When we went to England, we were in visited Stonehenge. My brother KT was there. We were representing. But this is one of the first times that we had an international audience that accepted us and then allowed us to speak. And this is why I salute Kalindi, because he allowed me and several of us to travel in the realms of the world that we never thought we would be and be in front of audiences we never thought we would be. So this is the Grandmaster Kalindi and how he would roll. Now, what did we learn about this sacred plant? What did he teach me? Well, the first thing he taught me is that these plants exist throughout the world, particularly throughout the universe, particularly psilocybin. Because it is a spore that can survive forms of radiation, drought, and everything else. Of course, they found evidence of spores on the NASA satellites. Of course, we know that spores come in on comets daily. And every day there are new spores and new species that are being found. And so that's how he helped me understand that this thing is cosmic. This is a connection thing. But he went further. And in our travels to Africa, we would go to different tribes. The Gadagambe, the Ashanti, the Fulani, the brothers, the Morite brothers and sisters in the Senegal, under Sheikh Moudou Baqui represent. And as we would go to these places and we would ask about these plants, every single one of them said, yeah, we knew about these plants. But like he said, Africa is the last place where these secrets are kept. And so we went deep through the bush to find these things out and bring them out. And so one time when we went to Ghana, we were greeted, we were with the Gadagambe people. And the host that brought us, he was of Ashanti, and he was hosting us. And the priest of the Gadagambe came to see Kalindi. And you know, this guy was flattered. And then the next day, the priest came to see Kalindi. And the next day, they came to see Kalindi. And the next day, for 7 days. Now this guy said, I've only seen these priests once in my life, twice. I guess when I was born and when my mother died. They come to see you 7 times. So then came the festival of the Nile. The Nile ceremony is when the Gambi people represent their migration from Kemet to West Africa. And they invited Kalindi to lead the procession. Because what had happened in those days, these warrior priests had invited us to show our system and what our philosophy was about. And so they instructed us to do our dance. They instructed us to, share what the science was about. And they acknowledged that he had brought this science he showed was directly from Kemet. So much so that they immediately made him a warrior priest. Now we thinking, okay, this is a nice honorary thing. So we hanging out. And then they wake us up one morning and they take us into the bushes. And the first thing they do, is they have us drink these big giant bowls of traditionally brewed beer. Now, if you know how the traditional people in the sports do, a lot of times it's fermented from the saliva of the elder women. It's a biogenetic marker to tie you in. And so here we go with these big giant gourds of lukewarm, very thick beer. 6 in the morning, and you know Ahati wasn't a drinker either. So they give us a gourd, we drink it. I drink it. I'm naive, like it would be disrespectful, you know? Kalindi lifted it to his lips and was like, thank you. They poured another one and then another one. Then they brought out these traditional gin that they made. So now it's like 6:40 in the morning, it's still dark, we're in the hills of Africa, and now these guys say, all right, let's get up and train. Now, my brother Big John back there, he was here to bear witness. Now here we are, tipsy drunk in the middle of Africa, and they want to see us train in real time. And the reason they were doing that was to see the authenticity of this man. They nodded. So the next year we returned. The guy that hosted us left us stranded. Funny story. Kalindi intuitively said, bro, Moudou, I think you might want to bring your tent. I said, bet. I brought my tent. So we get there. The guy stood us up. No problem, stranded in Africa. Oh, well, I'm with Kalindi. And sure enough, things work out. If you ever travel with Kalindi, sometimes you'll say, hey, where we going? And he'll be like, I don't know. You know, when we leaving? I don't know. Because he was the one that allowed synchronicity to take over. It'll be that perfect time when things would align and all of this. So as we traveling, walking down the Gold Coast, we find this sister that was familiar with him. Her husband had trained with him. And so she invited us to stay in the front yard. So as soon as we get in the yard, it's dark, you know, the clouds are gathering, the wind blows, you know, we like, oh, we better hurry up and get our tents. So we getting our tents up, you know, we got 2 pump tents. And man, I'm you know, Kalindi's all set, he's in there with his lantern, he's eating his snacks, and I'm fumbling with my tent because something's wrong. I left my poles at the guard booth. All of a sudden, the sky opens up, pouring rain. Psh, I'm sitting here cussing and all this. So this classic Kalindi, he zipped back to tent and say, you my brother, but you're not getting in here. And so these are the type of adventures we would have. So I had to just wrap myself up, you know, in plastic and sleep on the ground. But it was all good because it was always a laugh like that. So anyway, as we get, they invite us to get this new chief was getting installed. And if you know, they bring all their warriors out, you know, and it's a giant umbrella and they're doing their procession. I'm talking thousands and thousands. And they invite us to watch. And all of a sudden, on the horizon, there's a red umbrella that pops up. Now that means there's a dispute and there's a rival king. Real smoke, yeah. And I'm not talking like talking, I'm talking real smoke. You see people running with rusty machetes and bayonets and clubs, and all of a sudden, I mean, it's real warfare about to go down. So me and Kalindi like, yep, all right, time for us to go. All of a sudden, hey, Kalindi, here, this is your group. We look at Kalindi, I look at Kalindi, he's like, we getting the hell out of here, you know? But they're literally giving him, you know, charge of their military, you know, and he didn't realize that. But this was the type of praise and honor and respect he would get because of his humility. I'm not gonna go much longer, I know it's been tired, but we'll go through one more slide. We'll go through a couple more slides. Okay, go to one more slide. This is us, my first time at the Breaking Convention. I think it's Kalindi's probably 5th or 6th. This is a Breaking Convention conference in the UK that happens annually, and it's the largest psychedelic conference in Europe. And here where you find all the PhDs and all the scientists. And for years, this is where he would have to break in. He would literally come into the place. And this is why I loved him, because he'll stand up and tell a PhD, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, how do you know? Because you ain't taking enough, you know, just like that. And never shy about it and just let them know. So year after year, he would just kick the door in. And eventually they gave him an audience and he blew the doors out. And then he opened the door for more of us to come through. And then we began to share. And so now Brother Darren, who we saw earlier, he's on the planning committee of Breaking Convention because the number one response is, when you gonna bring them black people back? So, this is the type of, now, any egotistical person could have been like, this is my platform, right? No, he wasn't about that. His whole thing was, like he always taught me, our greatest responsibility is fulfilling the greatest potential of the people nearest to us. If you're not focusing on the people around you being great, how you gonna be great? And if people around me not focusing on me being great, I'm in trouble. So when I see potential in my folks, my family, my friends, my job is to increase that. If you wanna be a clown and I see a red nose, I'm gonna buy it and say, here go a red nose. One time, I learned the science of aquaponics, growing vegetation using fish in a closed loop system. He knew I was studying, I was teaching the youth, I set up a lab and everything. And this is how he rolled. So one afternoon, I'm at home just chilling. Doom, doom, doom. Kalindi, yeah, I got something for you. What? This man spent the last 2 weeks building me an aquaponics system for my house. Didn't say anything about it, didn't ask a dime, just dropped it off. But that's the type of love he had. Because if he saw you was striving for something, he was gonna push you, and vice versa. And that's one of the sciences of Tamarian Institute. You know, we are a cast of warrior priest teachers. We all have specialties, we all have strengths, and our job is to sharpen each other's sword and share it with community. We are servants first. And that's the thing that Kalindi taught. So you would see us doing martial arts demonstrations for free or not, but if you were welcome either way it came. There was no judgment, there was no, oh, they're not good enough, they're not this and that, because once again, they had a potential that we needed to develop. And so the spirit of Tamarian lives on in this room, you know, and I'm sure Ahati will recognize all of us as part of the Tamarian family, because what it is, it's about bonding and family and stability. It's about strength and growth. It's about each of us saying we don't have to be dependent on these systems that oppress us. We can be our own scientists. You want to be a biologist? Go fund an electron microscope. That's how he rolled. It wasn't no in between. And that's how we have to roll to achieve our greatest potentials. And that's what we're here for. And I know his spirit is here. Man, I'm getting goosebumps, man, because for years we would work for this. Those of us who've been coming for years, you remember sometimes it'd be 20 people in a room, right? You know, when it first started, and every year would grow. And I'm sure it's gonna keep growing. I wanna represent Mama Ayana, because to do this after losing your husband, that's kind of rough. The logistics, reconnecting with people that he knew, the financial aspects. Heck, it was people who already pre-ordered tickets and she didn't even know who they were, let alone taking the calculated saying, look, we're gonna go with this anyway, regardless of what people may feel or fear, you know, but this is how we roll, and this is how we all roll. We are all ambassadors of this work. We are all teachers. We all need to master the techniques of growing, developing, so we could be the apothecaries in our community. Because the thing is, this battle is not just physical. I know people know that. This battle is epic and it's millennial, and it goes on before and after the spirit. And if we don't recognize that, we lost the game, because they got us focused on this material thing. But the things that influence us to steal or to beat our loved ones, these are energetics that exist beyond the physical. These are people that, or energies that influence us. And if you're not in control and you don't know those influences that's dealing with you, well, you're in trouble and you're not in control. So the science of Tamarian was a warrior system. It dealt with the physical and the spiritual and the etheric. And so, man, I just want to keep going on, but I love this space. I'm looking forward to building and connecting more with y'all. I want to just open up a few minutes, if we can, just for questions and answers. Okay, all right. Mic check, mic check. All right.
Comments, questions. First off, just give it up for Big Moudou right quick, right fast. Make some noise. Woo! Get on your feet, man. Get on your feet. Make some noise, man. Make some noise.
That's how I remember him from here on. So, questions and comments.
So
I know we've been here for a while.
Y'all can sit down for a second, man. Stop rushing people. Stop rushing
all
people.
right.
I've been waiting. I've been waiting for a long time. I'm trying to get 4 people to go before me first. Who would like to go first? Who got a comment? What you feel about his presentation? Anybody got comments, questions? Oh. Ho. We recording everything, baby. Hold on 1 second. We're gonna get right to you. Name, Team Zodiac, and where you from?
Peace. This is Benta again. I'm Team Virgo, and I'm from Ypsilanti. Peace, Baba Moudou.
Peace, Mom.
I wanted to know, with the Tamarian Institute, is the Tamarian Institute still accepting brothers and sisters, and how do we make that connection?
All right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that point. In that spirit, I'd like to acknowledge our last living master of our system, Baba Kenny Moody, in the back, and I want to represent the future of Tamarian, my brother Ramasu Iyi. So these two brothers in the back, of course, the Iyi sisters, the Soke, Abanai, everybody in the Iyi family, holler at any of them, and they'll be able to, let you know what's going on.
Oh, don't get shy now.
Peace, everybody. My name's Brother Keeley, and I'm on the opposite side of Zodiac. I'm Team Pisces. Yeah. All right, Brother Moudou, you talked about, kind of some of the things that Baba Kalindi was talking about in terms of the arts and how to prepare. Can you give us a little bit more about what he was talking about in terms of like the expansiveness of that art and how you prepare in the other world?
Yes, sir. Well, the first thing is, as above, so below. And so in a practical application, training, bless this, training under a microdose to enhance your skill set. That 0.5 to 1.2 or even a little more. Actively training was a way to increase your instinct and your sensory awareness. And so that was the first application. Now in the etheric realm, he was teaching us that how to understand the way attacks come. So that, let's say for instance, as we were teaching, as Brother North Star and others were teaching, when you facing a crisis or a spiritual attack, it's never singular, it's more than one. You see what I'm saying? It's usually a compilation of things. And so when you're addressing one thing, you got to focus on several things. The science of breath, okay? One of the things that he shared with me, we didn't go over extensively, but one of the things he showed me was how to master those breaths in martial arts and in that realm to get to the deeper space. Because in training martial arts, the first thing you begin to meditate on is your mortality. And as you meditate on that, as you know, if you go into those deeper realms, you will meditate on your mortality, And so the other thing they were talking was that essential self, that little voice that goes on, that's the thing that's going to exist forever. And so through these plants, he was teaching us how to train the autonomic nervous system. So in the physical realm, in an incident that came, it's a reaction, it's not a thinking process. And through when you go into these microdose realms or these higher realms, you will actually go through these movements and you will learn different techniques and you will be training that finer nervous system. But then deeper than that is engaging those other energies when you're in that realm that spook the mess out of you. And so this is where concepts of understanding angle, because if you land, you change your angle or change your breathing or change your posture and things of that nature. And then if you get attacked, those techniques work just the same in that realm. In fact, better. But these are the things that he taught us from the physical to refine to the spirit. And so the expansiveness as we move and start doing super, or what we call high dose amounts, that's the point in which we began to consider things like my brother O and others. We'll go into the graveyard and engage. You see what I'm saying? Because that's when the work comes, where you warding off those negative energies, or you chasing those negative energies around your loved ones, or where you breaking or interfering with negative thought forms. That's when you became the offensive person in that realm. So when you first go in, you're sort of like, what's going on, But then as you go deeper into the realm, you become the active agent. You become the one that's setting tone, and you begin to recognize and engage those darker energies. And that's part of what he was about. It wasn't all like peace and love. No, it was like these harassing energies that are affecting the human condition must be dealt with. And so, yep.
Next, who's next? Who got another question for Pablo?
Greetings, peace, and love. I'm Brother Mikhail, coming out of Oakland, Scorpio team, represent.
Right.
And
Coach.
yeah, I got a question about what you just said as far as the spiritual warfare. I know it's a spiritual warfare on a daily, but what did Baba say as far as like what we need to do to overcome this warfare and take the consciousness and just the spirituality to a higher level?
Okay, beautiful question. As you know, Baba Kalindi was big in terms of understanding artificial intelligence and the singularity, things of that nature. He studied him from the aspect that this is an inevitability. He necessarily wasn't a fan of them, but he understood he knew to know them and how they operated. But see, he also understood that simultaneous to that movement is a movement of what we call hyperhuman development. And these are the people that are studying life extension technology, that are studying ways to, a lot of people hear about William Hoff. He's the famous guy, right? Being able to ward off disease through ancient breathing techniques. So simultaneous to this technical thing, there's also a movement that's going to stimulate the humans, whether it's ancient breath techniques, or whether it's life extension understanding, or whether it's hyper brain development, hyper memory development. So that's what he was always about, and that was on the physical realm now. And he realized that there was a quickening coming, and that soon, we would be divided between those who are those who have a living spirit, and those who are just tied into this artificial intelligence, i.e. microchips, i.e. all of these other attachable technologies. And so he understood that there was a 3-lane path. One was the artificial intelligence, which is the robots and the drones and everything. And then he understood that there was a cyborg movement going on, in which there were people working to find attachments and enhancements through attaching things to the technological body. But then he also understood that there's an ancient science of human, what we call human intelligence, and the development of the so-called superhuman. So these ancient stories from the Bhagavad Gita and things like that, they were real. But somewhere along the path, these sciences have been lost. And so his thing was, let's dedicate our energies, just like the biologist or the technical cat dedicates toward creating an AI or 5G. Let's use our energies to restore those ancient practices and techniques. And so that's why he would travel and go firsthand. Yeah.
Peace, I'm Steve.
Peace. What's your name, bro? No, I'm messing
Steve.
with you, man. That's my man.
Yeah, can you just kind of go briefly into what Baba Kalindi may be doing on the other side? I know he talked a lot about warfare. I was talking to one of the brothers in the Timerian Institute today, and he said he connected with him somewhat last night. He was tripping, and he said he was talking about the war, see if we was going to win over here, and he said we got a slim chance of winning, so can you just kind of go into that for me?
Yes, sir. So one of the things that Kalindi would talk about with our circle was going into the higher realms and establishing what we call a house. And those familiar with Orisha understand the science of a house and who you sit under. Those of a lot of spiritual systems understand you're sitting under a particular energetic influence or Orisha. And he also understood that when we go into that realm, sometimes as he taught me, there's been a total destruction of our spiritual home space. And so he was always about reestablishing the house, as he would call it. And it's kind of abstract, but we're in a room of psychonauts, so you know that when you're in that realm, sometimes you can get lost, you can get disoriented, things of that nature. It was all about establishing that spiritual house where you can get that power, that strength, that you know, those instructions. So if you get lost into that realm, you have a beachhead or a home post to go to. That was one of the things he was always talking about. His work in the realm was establishing a house so that people, as they go into those realms, they won't get lost or seduced or confused or scared, but they can be anchored. But in my opinion, what I think he's doing is, probably exploring our multiverse, because as we know, he wasn't afraid of death at all. In fact, he probably was looking forward to it. So I could see him manifesting a lot. And like I said, I'm convinced that a lot of the stuff that's going on, the social movements and all of these things, are a result of folks like us and Kalindi, you know, raising hell on the other side. You know, that's my firm belief. So I can expect a lot more shifts in what's going on in human development. I can see him throwing thunderbolts at some of the stuff that shouldn't exist. Personally, that's how I see it.
Are we coming up there? Hold on one second. My name is OU's son. I'm from Atlanta, Team Taurus. And my question is, what type of, I had to get in too now. I wasn't. What kind of conversations, Bible talked a lot about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. What were some of, maybe some of the private conversations, or like, can you tell like what made him get really big into, or what point in his journey of discovery did he kind of like jump on the cryptocurrency and Bitcoin like that? Because he was like, now, like, if you ain't got no Bitcoin, you better put $50 on it. You can buy some weed, you know, and stuff like that. So why was he so heavy on the cryptocurrency and the Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, you know, being a longtime student of law, early on, he understood that we were moving toward a cashless or a change of what we know as his currency. And he was looking for, and there were a lot of movements that were designed to like break the banking system as we know it. And so, you know, as time progressed, he learned about the Bitcoin thing, and it was a way to so-called break the system, you know what I'm saying? So he encouraged everybody to be a part of it. One, because it gave you the autonomy to be anywhere on the globe. As long as you got your phone, you got money. Two, it allowed you to have that autonomy. Three, it broke centralized banking, you know. And four, it was a new technology that, and you know, Baba was all about new technology and being on top of that. So he saw this as a tool for our liberation, where we wouldn't be tied to corporatized systems of banking and things of that nature. And so that's the best snapshot. And he always shouted out Ethereum. I don't know what you say, man. Bitcoin too, but
Kalinde was a Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple. He was like, I'm gonna take my Ripple and buy a Tesla, and the one that drive itself, and I'm gonna get in the car and it's gonna say, take me to OE house in Atlanta. So he was always talking about buying a Tesla with his Ripple. He was like, Ripple's at 19 cents.
But you were big, man. You were big on, and a couple others, I'm not sure, but I know you were big on expanding his awareness and how to move through that thing.
Oh, absolutely. Like trading. Kalinde was a hodler. He believed, I just want to buy it. I don't feel like trading it going up and down. Mm-hmm. But I definitely agree with his strategy. And I've been tracking it like since he left. Mm-hmm. So his assets have doubled since he left. Wow. Since April the 10th, it was at 6,000. Wow. It's almost at 12,000. Ethereum has tripled since he has left. Okay. So, you know, if somebody would just been like, man, I'm going to just go ahead and get me $2 or $3 worth right now, you would already be either 100% ahead or you would be 200% ahead right now. Yeah. And Ripple is probably maybe about 75% up. So like all of his digital assets and digital currencies are bull market right now, and they're going to continue to keep doing that.
That's dope. And that's the type of guy he was. He would hear about it, and then he'll be at the Bitcoin conference with the pros trying to find out. And that's why he was always giving us new advanced stuff that very few people knew about. And if you were wise enough to listen, you benefit, you know?
I want to say this. I connected with Kalinde a few days after he passed away. And this is what he told me. He says, I am the guardian of the galaxy. I was installed as commander-in-chief of the cosmos. I am the master key holder, and I will be passing out keys to the communities.
That's right.
I was also installed to sit on the blue lotus with Ra, Amun, Osiris, or Asar, Aset, and Haru. Sacred praise, sacred praise, sacred praise.
Ashe. Ashe.
The Ankhs, you see. And he said, some will be invisible, they'll be under your pillow. They'll be blown within your souls. And he gave me a key. So I wanted to share that with you because the brother is doing some awesome, oh, I forgot to tell you. He is green and gold. Yes.
Represent.
And then highlights of gold and predominantly green. And then he switches up and he becomes solid gold with the highlights of the green. And he will stay there until the job is done.
Ashe, Mo. Ashe. Ashe.
You got something to say, Ramsey?
Nope. Sure, thank you. I'm just wondering, I'm not sure if it's related to this lecture or not. Excuse me. Oh, yes, I'm Jesus Pina, and I am from San Diego, California.
All right, Cali, boy, it's a lot of Cali, man. That's what's up.
Thank you. Thank you. My zodiac is Libra, yeah. I'm just wondering, I'm not sure if it's related to this lecture, but he mentioned cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and I was very interested in that as well. And I wanted to ask, do you know anything about related to what he mentioned? Because somebody else mentioned the war, and I was wondering if you guys know anything about what he mentioned in defense to that with the AI weapons downloaded into a quartz crystal and quartz crystal technology.
Yeah. That's a very complicated, deep response. I'll try to do the best I can.
Just slide over to your left. It's right there beside you.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yep. Part of what those who venture into the realm, there's quite often we come across advanced technologies. And the hardest part is bringing them back. So we understand the crystal is the ultimate memory holder. It's the storage key. You see, it stores vibrational imprints, you see. And so the use of these stones, in particular this one and others, would allow you to imprint because, and those of you who know, when you come back, you're like, damn, what was that? So this is one of those technologies he talked about because this is a spiritual technology. How do we bring those key understanding ideas back? So what we find is that our friends, you in Cali, so you know about Silicon Valley, right? What is their number one vitamin? Psychedelics, right? Every morning, right? You think they make this stuff up from their own wits? No, well, no. So understanding this, he understood that there were people who were advancing, bringing back advanced technologies, and he wanted to bring this to the everyday people. So one of the greatest representatives that's local, that's here right now is Onyx Ashanti. And y'all get a chance, make sure you're here. Because this is somebody who went in and experienced some advanced technology, and he had the genius and the ability to bring back. And so and I don't want to tell the story, but essentially they showed him how to make a technology. He had no clue how to make it. He went back, they say, we'll build a machine to make it. He went back. What machine? A 3D printer. How the hell I build a 3D printer? Literally. He taught himself, built a 3D printer, went back, saw the schemes and the blueprints, printed it on a thing, and created this dynamic super machine to the point where he's a regular feature at MIT and TED and all over the globe. Very humble brother. But some of the brightest minds on the planet are clamoring to get his audience. And so this is the potential of these plants, and so use of crystal technology and things of that nature is some of the tools that we want to research and figure out how can we bring back those novel ideas and create what we call disruptive technology. See what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah.
My name is Nelson. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and I'm Team Pisces.
All right, all right.
My question is, did he speak on his? I know he met the South African shaman Credo Mutwa.
Mm-hmm.
Did he ever speak on his experience around him and what that was like?
Yeah, it was a disappointment, not from the experience, but when he went, his family was in an illness, and so he, in the traditional South Africa, not only was someone ill, someone had just had a child. In the South African Zulu tradition, you can't visit the house, so he was outside the gates, but he couldn't engage him. You know, he spoke with him, you know, on the phone and things of that nature, but the personal engagement he missed out on, you know, yeah.
Yeah, my name is Jamie, and I'm from Colorado, Team Sagittarius.
All right, greetings.
And I have two questions. First, did Kalindi ever tell you about his first mushroom trip?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And number two, the breathing techniques that you talked about reaching deeper into the realms while tripping, is that something that we can learn, or do we have to learn that after learning the martial arts breathing techniques? And is there a way we can learn that?
Well, I mean, okay, for the first question, yes, he did, and talked about his first trip. And one of his lifelong friends, hopefully we can get him, Baba Peter Andreas, who's a master of his own right, was the brother that, and they were peers, they were young peers. He introduced them, and they had experiences together. So he showed me the actual tree in the street and all of that, and hopefully Peter shared that story. But actually, that gentleman was one of the first people to have experience with Kalindi. So he'll be, I think, premiering tomorrow. Yeah, so definitely tune in. Now, second question, breathing techniques. Now, of course, there's ancient and there are many already open resources for learning breathing techniques, whether it's the serpent or the fire or, you know, square breathing techniques and things of that nature. But you really can't get an understanding unless you are either physically excited to the point where you're at that 145 BPMs and you have to master it to get a certain effect. But most of the time you can learn in that realm, because many of you have had that experience when you're like, oh shit, I'm dead, you know? And what you realize is that your breathing has become so sub-perceptible that it scares you. And then that's, you know, that experience you learn about, you know, the serpent breath. And then others, you're so excited, you know, that you know, you're out of control. So you learn through these techniques, and that's part of how the manuals were written, by being in these states and learning how to master the breath, because sometimes you'll find your breath fluctuating, and if you don't know how to master it, that's the difference between a good trip and a bad trip a lot of times, and why a sitter is needed, because sometimes they can say slow down, you know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Who's next?
How you doing, brother? My name is Jason. I'm from Detroit, Michigan.
So we shared our first experiences together. So
I'm a Pisces for all y'all that need to know. Okay. Foundation.
There you go.
All right. So first of all, bro, I want to tell you I'm proud of you, man. I'm real proud of you.
Thank you, man.
So my question is, through all this training, all your years of training, did you know that you was gonna be on the lecture circuit, or did you know that you was gonna be like a minister of information like this? Is this something you planned, or did it just fall like that, or did Baba position you like that?
It's definitely not something I planned, but I can say it's something Baba positioned me for, and positioned all of us. As you know, bro, he would assign us to elders. So like, if you had a strength, he'll say, look, you need to go sit with that person and learn. And so the people he sat me with, you know, like Owusu, Malik, and others, and you know, he had me learn with people, and then he would give us assignments, you know, show up here, do this. And so I realized he was putting me through a curriculum, but I didn't realize for what, you know, and I was flattered, you know, because that's, you know, that's the Ahati, that's my master teacher. But he would just reach out like a friend, and we would go on these long road trips, getting all kind of adventures, and sometimes we end up in Indiana at a UFO conference, you know, and talking to UFO abductees and getting firsthand, I mean, you wouldn't know, you know, like one time he called me, hey, let's go to Telluride. And I Telluride, Colorado, right? It was the next day. So he's like, no, we rent a car, drive 24 hours. And we did it, you know. Did we know where we were sleeping at night? No. He just said, bring a tent. So, you know, it was always an adventure, you know. All right, we do 6 hours each. It's 4 of us. We just, you know, so always an adventure, man. Yeah, so, you know, as you know, everything from taking a baby grand piano from the attic without any tools. These are some of the exotic trainings Kalindi would put us through.
My fault, y'all, my fault. So when did it make sense to you, like, okay, so this is what he want me to do? Like, when did it pop off?
He basically told me, voluntold me, you know what I'm saying? And first time was in Ghana, and you know, we went to a hall similar to this, and it was a political thing, and then he knew everybody in the room, they greeting him, and all of a sudden, and then he went to me and said, yeah, go up there and speak.
Oh,
yeah. And I say, about what? He said, tell him about Marcus Garvey, you know. So I'm in Ghana talking about Marcus Garvey, and I'm like, you know, I'm showing some history, and I say, well, you know, the Black Star, you know, Kwame Nkrumah was inspired by, you know, and then you see people getting mad, like, he's, you know, and then the last question said, do you think Barack Obama will be the great black presidential leader? I said, well, he'd be president. I don't know if he'd be the greatest leader. And my man was like, you liar, come running from the hall trying to attack me, man. It was crazy. Another adventure of Bahati, you know what I'm saying? Just sometimes, you know, another time in Ghana, walking down the road, lost, turned down the road. We end up at a Kriya Yoga shrine, you know what I'm saying? And if anybody know, one of the most profound Kriya Yoga teachers was out of DC. He was a brother, and he was a good friend of Kalindi. So, you know, we walk into this ashram, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, Kalindi. And I'm like, what the? Here we are in Ghana.
Way in Ghana, right?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so he put me back out there again. So a lot of times it just be impromptu, like, get up there, you know. And then, you know, he'd give me tips and things like that. And when I first did Breaking Convention, I did my thing. And then he said, you got it, you're good, you know, and that was the nod, you know, and that's all you needed from Mahati. Right, so yeah.
Well, I want you to know, bro, we proud of you, man. We got you all the way.
Thank you, dear brother. You know, we fam, man.
OE Son from Atlanta, Team Taurus. And one thing you were talking about one time in a story about how Baba was in the organic singularity piece that he did on the blog talk. He was talking about you can't be scary. And he was like, you got to scratch and claw for the knowledge. You got to scratch and claw for the power. And a lot of people would hear about his adventures and be like, well, oh, he does that, so he got it, not me. I ain't gonna do that because, you know, he had already done that so far. But from your take, did you feel that he wanted people that he would step aside and let people try? And was he looking for people who would take a chance and be courageous?
Absolutely, that's what he was about. So if you know, his exterior nature was gruff, and there was a lot of people who were, you know, intimidated to approach him and ask questions because he didn't smile a lot. And there's a reason he didn't smile a lot, because he didn't like to deal with nonsense individuals. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you wasn't gonna go hard, don't waste time, you know. And he definitely wasn't a hierarchical person. So one of the things he hated when people were like, you know, oh, the great, he'd be like, oh, get the hell, you know, because his thing was, okay, what you got to show me, you know, and we brothers and sisters in this thing. And that's what he taught me, man. He was just so humble that, one, if you weren't brave enough to approach and engage them like a human being. And two, if you were in any way trying to lower yourself or, and not provide the best which you can offer, he didn't like that. And so, he didn't believe in that. So this is the guy that, if any of you know Dr. Ben, when Dr. Ben's, one of his first trips, Kalindi was with him, learning right with him, sleeping in the king's tomb with him. This type of brother, he didn't say it, but when his teacher died in Africa, this is the man that took a trip to Africa and slept in his tomb overnight, in tradition, and so he didn't like timidity, I remember hearing many stories about him sleeping outside the Schomburg, museum, to study the culture of our people, literally sleeping on the park bench, homeless. I'm not talking like one night, I'm like for the whole week, just getting up, hanging out, eating. But his thing was, I'm gonna get this knowledge, not secondhand, but firsthand. And that's what he charged all of us to do, not be rumor, this and that, go up in those places and ask the questions and get the information and share it. Yeah, so he did not like timidity, my brother.
And my second question, as a mycologist and having sat for several people and understanding set and setting and the intimacies of it, what is one thing that you could recommend to help a person, whether they be a beginner, because there's a lot of beginners in here who have not tried yet, and then also there's the more experienced. Like 50 Cent said, it ain't about what you cop, it's what you can keep. Sometimes you see these great things over there, and then you get back, and you're sliding down, he was like, oh, that was so wonderful, I'm just gonna retain it. And you just doze off to sleep, and you wake up next morning and be like, oh, wait, what was that? So can you give something out to the family that would help us retain and keep some of these things that we cop as we go over, over to the other side on our trips to Disneyland?
That's right. Well, I mean, I know one of the keys, we represent, right? That she, right? So crystal technology was something he always talked about because, like he said, as we know how quartz crystal watches work, they imprint the vibration and they maintain that vibration. Same thing when you're in that realm. You impress those vibrations into the crystal and then you extract them in the waking time. That was one thing. Another thing, he was just like, don't bite off more than you can chew. When you go into that realm, it's like, it's just so many ideas and inspirations, Start simple, and then start with one thing and then go back for it the second time. So, I learned the science of, beekeeping, First time, it's like a bee was stung me in my head, and I knew it was time to start studying bees. So when I went back for the intention of learning more about bees. And then in the waking state, I went and studied about bees. And so this thing has a way of giving you a hint, and then if you lend energy to it during the waking time, things will start to synergistically align. That's where the magic is at, So he taught not only just take, you can't take it all with you, but if you can bring something small back and develop it in the waking time, you can usually return to it when you go back and then learn more,
Thank you so much, because I'm not very familiar with Kalindi. I'll introduce myself, very familiar, but I think your stories have really been able to give us a perspective as though we got a chance to get to know him personally. So I want to thank you so much. My name is Ayana. I'm from Pittsburgh, PA, about 4.5 hours away from here. Team Gemini. All right. Anybody Gemini? Okay, cool. So I wanted to ask the same question that this woman asked, because I'm going to search out the information, but just for people who are a little shy, I guess the question was, is the Tamarian Institute still open to receive people, children, what's the deets, as much as you can give? Because some people are maybe more shy, may not be feeling, Yeah. Okay, so that's
and Tamarian is an institute. Yes, we are open. You. And it's a representation of teachers. There's a Tamarian brother right behind you. He's a master of law. So Tamarian is a universe in the sense of universal sciences. In terms of the martial sciences, yes. Ramasu EE, we got Baba Jahi, we got, Baba Kenny, So we have that. And so, we offer whatever we can share with the community, as a family, as a collective, we exist. Even the Marion family outside of Detroit, because we got people that we connected with for many years. And when I say we, I'm talking as a youngster, because some of the Baba's been linking up with some of these folks for 30, 40 years. So we have an extended family throughout the nation, from California to New York, Texas to Michigan. Yep. Yeah, Bo. Yeah, Bo. Ashe.
Shameless plug. Moudou, do you feel that if everyone in here was to learn Baba's PF Tech technique and grow their own mushrooms, do you think that would really connect them in the different cities that they are? Because I hear a lot of people asking like, well, where y'all gonna be at? Well, where y'all gonna be at? Well, where y'all gonna be at? But then when you say, well, do you grow? And they be like, nah, well, I ain't growing. Because I think they think that they associate Tamarian with kicks, punches, strikes, protecting themselves from rapists, taking knives from bad guys.
Yeah.
But the grinding rice story, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to be in Detroit to get you some brown rice flour and get you 12 jars from Walmart and get you some vermiculite and get you a pressure cooker. So what would that look like if, you know, it was 89 chairs in here, so it's like, let's say it's 85 people in here right now. In 2 years' time, if everybody in here was growing with Baba's technique, would that be like, yo, I'm part of the Tamarian family because now you are actually growing the fruit?
Well, you know, it's more than that. And so, disclaimer, as my bro always say, his technique, these techniques are universal, so he doesn't have a claim to them. It's not like he developed them, but this is the technique that we learned through grinding rice. And the question is yes and yes. If everybody started growing and developing, because it's not necessarily like where you pay membership. It's a philosophy. It's an approach. It's a belief. It's a way of life. It's a culture. You see what I'm saying? And part of that is one, understanding this technique, but it's also understanding the ancient ways of people, the ancient morality code, the ancient ethic code, the ancient codes of family, of stability. So it represents an epic, a time when humans were human. So by pursuing those ancient arts and those ancient attempts to be more human, essentially you are Tamarian, yeah.
Baba Moudou, I want to say thank you for those cool runnings and hearing all these wonderful stories that I kind of missed out on. I mean, he would come home from a long journey and I was like, how was your trip? It was good. Yeah. Okay. So hearing the intricacies and all of the things that you all did, I know my life with him was an adventure, and just hearing some of the things that you guys did just warmed my heart, baby. Oh, so thank you so much for that.
Well,
okay?
Thank you. Big ups to you, Mama. This is a mammoth salute to Baba. I know he's, man.
All right, y'all give it up for Moudou. It's getting late. Y'all got to be
Thank
back here in the morning.
Thank y'all for your audience.
Y'all got to give it up. Get on your feet one time. You don't get these kind of Kalinde stories. Make it loud, 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 make it loud. Make it loud. Make it loud. Make it loud. Psycho Nas, I can't hear you.
The sacred fruit, y'all.
Y'all Tamarians, baby. Appreciate that, Bob. Hey, man.
I appreciate you, bro. Love you too, man. Absolutely. Look, man, I barely knew this brother, man, but I've seen the amount of work he putting in, man. So y'all give this man props, man. Cause, you know, so I'm, you know, he doing it, man. But see, this is Tamarian, because, you know, he has a media game that's out cold. You know what I'm saying? This is an aspect that we could have used and we still can use. And so we appreciate you sharing that art. That's what Tamarian's about, sharing your art, bringing out the best in everybody. So Ashe, my bro.
Ashe, thank you, brother. All right, how y'all feeling? Was today worthwhile? Was today worthwhile? Who was here yesterday and today? Raise your hand. Look at somebody and say, good Lord of mercy. For those of you who missed it yesterday, you better be here early tomorrow. Who's coming tomorrow? All right, look. They used to put Baba Kalindi like early at 8 o'clock in the morning on like Saturday because all these psychonauts will go out and get high, you know what I'm saying, on the night before. Don't do that tonight. You know what I'm saying? Get you some chicken or some vegan patties or something and go on to bed because doors open at 9 o'clock tomorrow and we starting sharp at 10, okay? My business partner and my mama says that ain't doing all this running over till 2:30 in the morning and all that right there. So, we love y'all. This has been great. We are halfway down. Tomorrow's full day now. Tomorrow's like big 12 hours. And then we got the memorial on Sunday. Go get some rest. Go drink some water. Make sure you network. Take some selfies with somebody. I need about, the memorial is at 12:30 on Sunday. It's at 12:30 on Sunday. We'll have all the information tomorrow. I don't have that off the top of my head right now. Somebody else knows it, but I'm sure somebody else in here does. So we're gonna see y'all tomorrow, but I am taking, I need about 4 folks. You hanging around tonight, I'm gonna take you upstairs and get my interview. So I think it's gonna be Firewater and Ramasu first, and then the sister right here with the singing bowls, and Osachari, and then a couple more others. So I'll see y'all in the morning. Peace.